Well, hello. My name's Nancy Mackey, and you have joined us for Talent Treasures. These are our conversations with our friends from the Open Gate, where we get to talk about the number one talent theme on the Clifton Strengths 34, which is a powerful tool that I really enjoy using, and it's a great way to learn about ourselves and about our teams. And joining me here today is Kris Josue, and Kris is the Director of Marketing at Wellspring Family Services, and we'll be talking about her top talent, which is ideation. And Kris, I'm so glad you were willing to join us today. Welcome.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
Yeah, and so just for the folks that are listening, a little background on the Clifton Strengths, which is again a profile of 34 different talent themes, and talents are those things that we're just naturally inclined towards. They're ways that our brains like to think. And when those that bubble up to the top of the list are the talents that we tend to use almost without thinking. It's like breathing, so to speak. And the talent of ideation, folks that have this talent, like Kris, are always fascinated by new ideas and like to make connections. And they're delighted when you can find a simple concept and have it explain things the way they are. And so, Kris, that is your number one talent theme, creative idea generating person. So, what are some of the ways that you see ideation just playing out in your typical day?
Sure. Usually I think you said it, curiosity,
Hmm.
um, is really how it shows up. So if I hear something or I'm presented with, whether it's a problem or, an idea, my initial response is usually, like, at least mentally, I'll think of a question, a follow-up question, or I might probe further. If it's a problem, I might start to deconstruct it, like pick it apart, look at all the different pieces, and start to think about those pieces from different angles and
Hmm.
ask questions about, like, how does this fit? And, why is it this way? And so I think that's how I experience it for the most part. Um, Sometimes I tend to, you know, ask questions beyond maybe the scope. Like, I'll find myself doing that. And my mind might wander a little bit, but that's how, I don't know, how I often will experience um, going outside of the box, if you will,
Right.
and making those connections when they seem outside of the current scope,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. And I was reading recently about innovation, and one description of being able to innovate is that ability to make those connections. So it sounds like you do a lot of just connecting of different things. Do you Were you always conscious of that, or now that you've seen it on your Clifton Strengths, how has that changed your perception of that quality of yours?
I don't think I've always been conscious of it. Well, not in the way that I had like a word to define it,
Right.
or if that was like an official label, if you will. But um, what I have noticed is when I'm generating ideas, it's when I feel most energized. So
Mm-hmm.
it feels like a natural thing. It feels I'm easily engaged when I'm in that thought process of generating. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the extent of how I've noticed it. And it's
Yeah.
something that's exciting and
Yeah.
keeps me engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and do you find that other people notice that talent in you, or have you others kind of comment on that, or what do you experience from others?
I don't know if they notice necessarily. I think they might make a comment or say, like, you looks like you're thinking,
Hmm.
or like
Yeah.
I might catch myself,
Yeah.
just kind of looking out into the distance, even though I am paying attention and just processing kind of what I'm hearing and starting to ask questions in my mind about what I'm hearing. And then, I might hear someone say like, you're really quiet. You must be thinking of something. Usually I am in that moment.
Yeah.
Or I might get puzzled looks when I share like an idea or I spit out something. And I've in my mind already made a mental connection between two seemingly unrelated things. So that would cue me when I see those expressions, or if I get questions, that would cue me to provide more context about what I just said.
Yeah.
Just some small ways that I notice.
Yeah. I imagine it might feel like you're a step or two ahead because, other folks aren't making necessarily those connections. Is that an experience?
I wouldn't say ahead, but I do tend to find seeds, if you will, for the
I
starter
like
idea
that.
of something. When I hear a problem or something's presented to me, I might immediately have a list of things that I'll either ask because I have something I'm thinking about, or an idea that I'm thinking about. But so in that sense, I guess, in terms of thinking of generating ideas, I might have seeds. Yes.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And then always fun to see where those seeds go. Well, and as a director, you lead a team, and so I'm curious how the ideation talent, are there ways that you see it helps you to motivate others and people on your team?
I think I this is this comes out when there's opportunity to share what I see in team members or in staff, particularly when they're dealing with maybe a challenge or some things that they need help with a solution. And if I can look at their skills and their talents and look at it from different perspectives, I can share that with them and help them see what they're capable of and how they can maybe tackle this particular challenge. Or on the other side, it's also helping them see or see a problem in different ways or from different angles, and just really reminding them of their strengths, something that I don't think is natural for any of us in the moment, to just think of oh, I can do this. I'm,
Right.
I'm capable in this area.
Right.
We're so focused on just the task at hand that we
Right.
sometimes maybe have tunnel vision when it's a really intense
Right.
challenge. But to hear or to be able to share what skills and talents team member has that can help them kind of bring it to their consciousness and know that they're capable of it.
Yeah, I like that. I just had a thought of your earlier analogy of planting the seeds. And then when you're helping others see it, it's almost like the seed came to the surface. And now we can see it and others can see it and they're seeing, benefiting from that. Well, I'm wondering too, let's say you're faced with a problem of some sort. Maybe it's let's use maybe just a challenge in the workplace. Maybe there's some misunderstandings or something like that. How might you utilize your ideation to start tackling a problem?
So if there was a misunderstanding specifically for that example, because I can see a challenge, or let's say it was a conflict of ideas, or whatever the case may be, there's not an alignment in what we're trying to achieve or what we're trying to get to. being able to see it from different perspectives
Mhm.
helps remove the piece that might be one causing mental tension or emotional tension.
Mhm.
Um, with conflict, there usually is that, like,
Right.
there might be frustration, there might be, um, discomfort,
Right.
but that would mean that it's coming from one particular lens, like I'm looking at the problem from one particular lens. But if I can
Mhm.
look at it from someone else's perspective or from an outside, maybe a different angle, then that
Mhm.
helps remove um, the emotional aspect of it, which
Right.
often can be a roadblock. And so
Right.
that helps with just getting to the next step of maybe seeing it from the other person's perspective. Um, and then being able to align, mm, myself somehow with that person and what
Yeah.
they're thinking and step into their shoes and see it from their perspective.
Yeah. Do you find that a conscious process, or is or unconscious, like you're not even really thinking about it, you're just jumping immediately to thinking about their perspective, or are you sitting down and say, okay, how can I change my thinking so I can try to understand,
I
if
think it's
that makes
more,
sense? That's kind of
yeah,
an
I
obscure
think it's,
question, but
yeah, I think it's more of a, just a natural, response as opposed to like a
mhm.
thoughtful, I need to sit down and really think about like a different way to approach this. It's more of
Mhm.
like, how can I, it's just a natural
Mhm.
response, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking about your role again in a management capacity. Let's say you have someone on your team that maybe struggles with coming up with alternate solutions or
Mhm.
thinking about different ways of doing things. How might you coach that person to kind of learn how to be more have more ideation qualities?
So I might start with really understanding what their skill sets are, what their talents are. And it's really helpful, I think, in my opinion, to have something like an assessment. Like if I
Yeah.
had, um, you know, for example, results,
Hmm.
an inventory of their skill set,
Yeah.
results of an assessment of their talents, like the one that this produces.
Right.
Then that would help me see what their capabilities are, what their strengths are,
Hmm.
and use that as a reference
Yeah.
to um, coach them. And again, it goes back to like bringing to their consciousness and their
Right.
awareness what they're capable of doing. Um, it may not necessarily be in a really, you know, formal way where you're looking at,
Hmm.
well, your Clifton Strengths results
Right.
say that
Right.
you have
Right.
these capabilities, but just knowing in the moment that um, that's something that they are capable of, and you
Hmm.
can prompt that skill
Hmm.
by presenting a way to look at a task differently. So
Yeah.
let's say um, it might be that they're really into data and information.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what that
Right.
talent, you know,
Right.
is.
Might be analytical and on this.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it might be analytical. And so that's something that would engage their talents
Hmm.
and help them approach the problem from an analytical standpoint. And so
Yeah.
to communicate with them um, in alignment with how they're engaged and
Hmm.
um, therefore be able to motivate them because it's a language they speak. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Well, and I just love that how you're thinking about, yeah, not how can I necessarily produce more ideation in them, but really how can I take the talents that they have and try to maybe get them to see how they can apply that in a different, more creative way, which is totally in line with actually the CliftonStrengths model, which is really let's not worry so much about changing what we're not good at, but let's really focus on leveraging what we are. So, yeah, that's such a great point. Well, and one other, we focus on strengths, and certainly our strengths can help us do really well and really excel in things. The flip side of our strengths is that they can also sometimes get in our way and be a
Mhm,
barrier.
mhm.
And I know my number one does all the time, and maybe we misapply it, maybe we overuse it. So, have you found any ways that ideation throws a roadblock up for you?
Absolutely.
And how does that happen? How does that play out?
I can definitely go down rabbit holes.
Ah,
I have, when I'm presented particularly with a really engaging challenge or problem, um, I won't stop. It's hard to
mhm.
stop think about all these ideas and how to solve
Yeah,
for those problems.
yeah,
And if I go, if I have a bunch of maybe theories of how I think they might be solved, I might chase down one, like
mhm,
really far, take it really far,
mhm,
and formulate like the whole picture of how this could potentially solve this problem.
yeah,
Um, Sometimes it keeps me up at night.
yeah, yeah,
Particularly if I don't, consciously stop myself and put boundaries in place of like, okay, it's time to switch this off and
right,
go do something else.
yeah,
And and that is a challenge.
yeah,
Again, particularly if the problem is engaging and intriguing
yeah,
and something new and novel,
yeah,
uh, then that becomes ideation, becomes a
yeah,
challenge for me.
yeah,
Uh, Also, um, when when I come up with something that I think in my mind is a great idea, I'll
mhm,
build it out, and
yeah,
that whole build out process without um, maybe first asking about where the
mhm,
parameters are, what the limitations
ah,
are, and what the scope is. I'll try to just build it out and see what it looks like, in
mhm,
my mind. And again, that can go out of scope, bring me out of scope.
yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
So it seems like if I'm what I'm interpreting from that a little bit is that it becomes then a time suck for you, and that as busy as you are, there might be other priorities you need to attend to, and that probably makes it hard. Is that kind of a fair interpretation of what I'm hearing?
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, how have you learned to manage around that? What have you done to, I mean, you seem very aware of that fact, but how have you learned to manage around that?
I have practiced, and I
Mhm.
think I've gotten really good at it over time.
Mhm.
When I'm presented with a problem, or if there's a concern that's brought to my attention, or if someone asks for ideas to be generated,
Mhm.
I will make a conscious effort to ask for what the scope is, what the
Right.
parameters are, what the goal is, so I can create an anchor. So I know that I can't go out of, for example, XYZ
Right.
budget or time constraint or whatever the case may be. And so it keeps the exercise of generating ideas focused, and I'm less likely to go down rabbit holes and tangents.
Mhm.
But you know, uh, there's a part of it that still happens. That like
Mhm.
I would still go on little tangents because it's part of the what if, what if
Right.
it's this way? What if it's
Right.
that way instead? Can we push this boundary a little bit?
Right.
And so there's still some of that that happens, but at least there's some there's the boundaries of the sandbox, if you will, are
I like how you said the image that was coming to my mind were the guardrails so you don't run off the cliff.
yeah, this one's
uh,
you can still build things within the sandbox.
right.
Still fun, and you can build as high as you want, but you can't
Right.
go, you know,
You can't go into the other playground.
yeah.
Well, another fun thing to do is to compare and contrast some of these different talent themes.
Mhm.
And two that are one that's a bit of an opposite to ideation is focus. So I just wanted to read you a couple statements of those two and see if I can get your kind of reaction to that. And
Mhm.
I did look at your Clifton Strengths. The focus was not in your top five, which people sometimes can have the two opposing ones in their top five. I didn't see where it was on your list, but um, so ideation, a statement is I open the windows of my mind to increase the possibility of discovery. And focus is I close the windows of my mind to decrease the possibility of distraction. So just curious your reactions to that.
Sure. Just hearing the words and the almost contrasting descriptions. When I hear ideation, it feels like a harmonious experience.
Mhm.
Um, that's why that's what I would associate it with
Mhm.
in terms of like feeling or a sense of what that brings up for me.
Mhm.
With focus, well, I do think that there is like power in that. My natural kind of response to it feels a little restrictive.
Yeah.
Um, and that's within the context of contrasting experiences, not so
Right.
much as a practice, because we all,
Right.
need to focus.
Right.
But from a thinking exercise, from like a thought process, I think ideation feels a little bit more of a harmonious
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
That is such a fascinating answer, Kris. And you know what I was thinking? Wouldn't it be cool if we had a person whose number one talent theme was focus right now and we could ask the same question right in this moment? As I'd be curious how they'd answer that. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm curious too.
that's fascinating. Well, again, with the ideation as your number one talent theme, what are
Mhm.
some things that you need to grow and succeed?
To grow and succeed, I think a good challenge is
Mhm.
one. I think a dynamic environment where, it's not the same thing.
Mhm.
It's funny because problems are often energizing.
Mm.
Flip side, they can burn me out because of that
Right.
whole stumbling block of going down rabbit holes and trying to
Right.
think solutions until you have one, then you
Right.
can go to sleep.
Right.
Uh, but it's definitely problems can be, or challenges can be energizing.
Yeah.
So I think room to have um, exposure to a good challenge
Mhm.
is good. And then in terms of growing, I think also exposure to or opportunities to learn, which comes
Yeah.
with, the challenges. I think the quality of ideas get better with the
Mhm.
more challenging the problems are, the more, engaging the challenge might be.
Yeah.
Um, and more I get to work with others.
Yeah.
Kind of helps refine um, that skill
Right.
and improves the quality of output
Yeah,
as well.
for
And
sure.
of course, psychological safety is
Mhm.
you know, the foundation for it all. If you can't, if you don't feel safe expressing an idea, no matter how
Right.
outlandish it might be in your head, then you can't grow
You
and
can't express, yeah. Which is a good example. I mean, you and I both have facilitated over the years why a lot of times you start a brainstorming session with, we don't want to judge ideas. We want to get everything out on the table. All ideas are good at this point. We'll evaluate later. And trying to set that boundary up front so we're not just uh, putting holes in things before they even get a chance to be explored.
Mhm.
So, for sure.
Yeah.
And what, and here's kind of are there any things that others might do that frustrate your ideation talent?
Right off the bat, I think commitment to the status quo.
You don't like that, huh? But this is the way we've always done it, Kris. Why change? Did I just annoy you?
I think, I know that sounds like it can make a lot of people uncomfortable, and it's
Sure.
something that I can be really fully aware of.
Mhm.
Resistance to things or to see things differently is perfectly normal,
Yeah.
particularly when you want, things to not change so much.
Yeah.
And my awareness of that helps me respond with empathy, even though it can
Mhm.
be internally a little bit frustrating, like
Yeah.
there's a better way to do this, or could there be a
Yeah.
better way to do this?
Yeah.
Um, but just I think being mindful of how others feel about bringing in change or
Yeah.
introducing something different, um, that could also be unhelpful,
Yeah.
if approached different, or if approached incorrectly, or
Right.
you know blindly. So
Yeah. Well, and so nice that you bring the empathy into the equation, right? Trying to, again, I mean, kind of what you said earlier, trying to see things from their perspective. It's almost circular that your ideation is helping you with the thing that frustrates you. So, pretty amazing talent, actually. And it's funny, I was thinking too what you said earlier about um, when you're starting to tackle a problem and you're just kind of going deep. And I remember when you and I were kind of setting up for this call, and you were talking about a new challenge that you had had, and you said something about spending a whole weekend kind of reading podcasts and all sorts of stuff on the subject to kind of get
yeah.
yourself up to speed. And like you said, that probably really produced great quality ideas because you took the time. But I also noticed in your top five you have learner, which
Mhm.
is another go down the rabbit hole talent. So those two dovetail very nicely together, actually, I think.
Yeah, it's something that I actually enjoy, which I
Yeah.
think it can be a bit of a double-edged sword, if you
Mhm.
will, because there's no rest.
Right.
But when you have a problem that when I see that there might be a solution, but I'm not, I need more information, I will spend my downtime
Mhm.
exploring that solution or gathering information to
Yeah.
um, really ensure that the idea um, can be substantiated
Yeah.
with quality information. And so doing the research and listening to podcasts and
Yeah.
audiobooks and all
Yep.
that stuff, it keeps the mind engaged,
Mhm.
even though it does really need to rest in order to,
Yeah.
that's another ingredient for, quality ideas, is to give a balance to input and output, and then
Yeah.
rest.
Yeah. Kind of the rest being the hard part, like we've talked about. Yeah, for sure. Well, I love this. And are there any kind of words of encouragement that you might want to leave folks with, others with ideation? Any final thoughts?
Um, I'd say learn about the talents of those around you. If you're an ideator, especially if you're a leader, if you have access to a talent inventory like CliftonStrengths, um, just imagine what the possibilities would be if you could
Yeah.
maximize, if you had access to that inventory, you could maximize the capabilities of your team, because you can connect the dots. Um, and you can see relationships between strengths and talents of unique individuals. You can create harmony and um, synergy within the
Yeah.
team. Possibilities are basically endless.
Yeah. I love
What
it.
team can be capable of. And then, of
Yeah.
course, stay curious, never lose your sense of wonder. I think that's something that's helps fuel our source for ideas, is to just keep wondering, what's
Yeah.
out there, what's new. Um, and then have the boldness to share ideas
Mm,
and have the humility to know that they might not always be the best ones.
yeah.
And then just know where the, your ego is at all times and invest in quality learning experiences. Quality of your input determines the quality of your output. And I think just keeping in mind, like when, you're tired or when all hope is lost, you'll always have an idea. You'll never be out of one.
Always something else to think about.
Yes, there
What?
always will. We can run out, the world can run out of cheese, but we will never run out of ideas.
All right, I'll be looking for the next cheese supplement from you, Kris. Well, what great words of wisdom. I so appreciate you, Kris. And one thing I didn't say in the introduction is that I had the privilege of working with you moons ago. And this conversation is just reminded me how much fun it was to work with you. And I think in large part was your creative energy and your ideation. So thank you so much for taking time today. I really appreciate you.
A pleasure, and I would echo that. It's been a joy working with you and um, your great ideas and just our synergy and yeah, the way we collaborated. That was very fun.
Lots of fun. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you. And thanks everybody for listening in. And we hope to see you next time.